Greetings from the Book Whisper. Every story is a journey into a world of love, passion, deception, and self-discovery. Close your eyes, let the sounds carry you away, and may this story touch your heart. Whispers in the Midnight Sun. Part 1, The Refuge. The wheels of Arden's Subaru crunched on the gravel road, the sound swallowed by the immense, green silence of the Alaskan wilderness. Pinecrest wasn't on most maps. It was a speck, a stubborn afterthought clinging to the shore of Lake Ileana, where the spruce forests grew so thick they seemed to absorb sound itself. She had driven for 2 days straight from Seattle, fueled by a cold, numb anger that had only begun to thaw into a profound exhaustion somewhere past Anchorage. Her husband, Tyler, a man with a smile as practiced as a lawyer's opening statement, which he was, had been having an affair with her closest friend, Elise. The discovery was not dramatic. No lipstick on a collar, no incriminating text left open. It was a credit card charge for a boutique hotel in Portland, a city where neither had business. On a weekend Arden was visiting her sick mother, a forensic accountant by trade. Arden found lies in columns of numbers. Tyler's columns had been impeccably clean for years. It was a single, stupid, reckless deviation from the pattern that undid him. She confronted him. He cried, he begged, he blamed the stress, the distance. She packed a single suitcase, left the divorce papers with her own lawyer, and pointed her car north. She needed geography so vast it would make her personal catastrophe feel microscopic. The house was exactly as pictured in the vague online listing, a weathered, 2-story cedar structure that had settled into the landscape like an old bone. It was divided into 2 separate apartments. The owner, Vera, a woman in her late 70s with a face like a weathered apple and eyes the color of lake ice, met her with a spare key and fewer than 10 words. Top half's yours, bottom's mine. Quiet hours are whenever I say they are. She pointed a knobby finger at a woodpile. You'll need to split your own. Sun doesn't mean warm. It was June. The midnight sun hung low on the horizon, a permanent, diffused gold that erased shadows and scrambled all internal clocks. Day bled into night, which was merely a paler, airier version of day. Arden, used to the sharp delineations of city life, streetlights flickering on at a precise hour, the glow of her laptop in a dark apartment, felt unmoored. She slept in fitful bursts, her dreams vivid and disorienting. Pinecrest itself was a postcard of rugged Americana that felt 1 degree off kilter. A single main street boasted Mick's Diner, a general store that sold everything from fishing lures to anniversary cards, a tiny clinic with a red cross painted on the door, and Carson's Lumber Hardware, the apparent economic engine of the town. The air smelled of sawdust, wet pine, and, faintly, the cold, mineral breath of the lake. She first encountered the Carson family in full at the town's annual Farewell to the Sun Festival, a paradox, since the sun wouldn't properly set for weeks. It was a potluck bonfire on the lakeshore, a ritual of communal defiance against the coming, deep winter dark. Victor Carson was a big man, broad-shouldered and solid as one of his own timber beams, with a handshake that could crush rock and a smile that didn't quite reach his pale blue eyes. He stood by the fire, holding court with the fishermen and mill workers. His wife, Lydia, was the event's radiant center. She moved through the crowd with a hostess's effortless grace, her auburn hair catching the firelight, her laugh a clear, bell-like sound. She wore a simple, ivory-colored sweater that somehow looked elegant, and when she saw Arden, a stranger lingering at the edge of the light, she glided over. "You must be our summer ghost," Lydia said, her smile warm and inclusive. Vera mentioned a Seattle girl hiding out. "I'm Lydia Carson. This damp gathering is our idea of high society." Her grip was firm, her gaze direct and assessing. "You can't just lurk, come, meet everyone." Arden was pulled into the orbit. She met the stoic fisherman, the garrulous store owner, the young, bored-looking seasonal workers, and then Lydia presented her son. "And this is Kieran, our town's hope and future. He just finished his residency in Fairbanks and is slumming it at our little clinic for the summer." Kieran Carson had his mother's arresting features, the same sharp cheekbones, the same full mouth, but where hers were animated, his were still. He had his father's height, but none of the bullish solidity. He was lean, almost tense. His eyes, a peculiar shade of hazel that looked green in the firelight, met Arden's. There was no small-town curiosity in them, only a deep, unsettling weariness. "Arden," he said, repeating her name after the introduction. It wasn't a question, running from more to something? The bluntness startled her. A bit of both, I suppose. The firm is usually more interesting, he said, then turned to accept a beer from a friend, effectively ending the conversation. But Arden felt the ghost of his gaze on her for the rest of the evening. Part 2, The Crack in the Picture. Life in Pinecrest assumed a strange, suspended rhythm. Arden worked remotely, her spreadsheets and financial models a stark, digital contrast to the primal landscape outside her window. She took long walks along the lake, the spongy moss silencing her steps. The perpetual twilight played tricks on her mind. She'd find herself wide awake at 2 a.m., writing emails, or heavy with sleep at 3 p.m. It was during one of these nocturnal wanderings, a week after the festival, that she saw them. The sun was at its lowest, casting the world in a sodium vapor glow. She had strayed further than usual, past the public dock to a dilapidated private boathouse belonging, she assumed, to the Carsons, and there they were, near the water's edge. Lydia and Kieran. They weren't touching, they stood a good 3 feet apart, but the space between them vibrated with an electric, unnatural tension. Lydia was speaking, her face upturned to his, one hand half raised as if to emphasize a point, or perhaps to touch him. Kieran's posture was rigid, his head bowed not in listening, but in a posture of profound resistance, or agony. Even from 50 yards away, through the spectral light, Arden could read the scene. This was not a mother giving advice to her son. This was a negotiation, a plea, charged with a history that had nothing to do with family. Arden froze, the cold of the lake seeping through her shoes. Lydia's hand dropped. She said one last thing, then turned and walked briskly back toward the grand log house up the hill. Kieran remained, a solitary statue, for a full minute before slamming his fist softly against a wooden piling. The sound, a dull thud, carried perfectly across the still water to where Arden stood, hidden by a thick curtain of blueberry bushes. She backed away silently, her heart hammering. The perfect picture from the festival. The proud father, the gracious mother, the accomplished son had a deep, hidden fissure. Curiosity, that sharp tool of her profession, now turned on this small, human mystery. She began to listen more carefully at Mick's diner, where gossip was served with the reindeer sausage. She offered to help Vera in her overgrown garden, earning fragments of story over the scrape of a trowel. The mill was the Thorne family business, Vera said one afternoon, her voice a dry rustle. Lydia was a Thorne, only child, pretty as a picture and wild as a March hare when she was young. Then that geologist fellow came through, mapping something or other. Daniel Shaw turned her head clean around. Vera paused, wiping her brow. He left before the first snow. Lydia, well, she changed, married Victor Carson the next spring. He was just a foreman then, ambitious, strong. Kieran was born 7 months later. Vera fixed Arden with her milky stare. Victor gave that boy his name, raised him as his own. Town called him a saint for it, still does. And the geologist? Arden asked, her throat tight. Gone, never heard from again. But you look at Kieran sometime, really look, then look at the old photo album in the library's back room, the one Lydia pretends doesn't exist. Vera shrugged, a gesture of finality. Some stories get buried because the ground here is too hard for proper graves. Part 3, The Unlikely Confidant. Arden found the album. It was in a dusty cabinet labeled Local Industries Historical. Tucked between ledgers on mining claims was a leather-bound book. Inside, among pictures of the old mill and town founders, was a snapshot. A young, breathtakingly vibrant Lydia, head thrown back in laughter, arms wrapped around the waist of a tall, grinning man in field gear, Daniel Shaw. The resemblance to Kieran was not a suggestion, it was a fact. The same arch of the brow, the same set of the jaw, the same keen intensity in the eyes. The discovery felt like holding a live wire. She understood now the source of the tension by the boathouse. Kieran was a living, breathing ghost of his mother's great, lost passion, and the way Lydia looked at him, it was a look that crossed a line, blurring the memory of the lover with the presence of the son. Arden's own pain, the raw wound of Tyler's betrayal, began to morph. It was no longer the largest hurt in the world. She saw in Kieran a different kind of prison, a gilded cage built on a foundational lie. Their paths crossed more often. He'd be at the clinic when she went in for a mosquito bite that wouldn't heal. He'd be at the general store buying coffee when she was. The silence between them evolved, becoming charged with a mutual, unspoken recognition of damage. One evening, she found him sitting on the public dock, legs dangling over the water, a bottle of cheap whiskey beside him. "Can't sleep either?" she asked, sitting down a respectful distance away. "Sleep requires a certain peace of mind," he said, not looking at her, "or exhaustion of the body. I have neither. The midnight sun doesn't help." "The sun," he said bitterly, "shines a light on everything, all the time. There's no relief, no shadows to hide in." He finally glanced at her. "You're hiding too, but you get to leave." The dam broke then, not with a flood, but with a slow, steady leak. He didn't confess in so many words, but he painted the outlines of his life, the weight of being the heir to a legacy that wasn't biologically his, the suffocating expectation of the town, the constant, smothering presence of his mother's unresolved past, a past he physically embodied, and Victor's quiet, resentful acceptance of it all, a bargain struck long ago for control of the mill and the prettiest wife in the territory. "He knows," Kieran said, his voice flat. "He's always known. It's the unspoken clause in their marriage contract. He gets the thorn mill and the trophy wife. She gets me, a consolation prize that looks like the grand prize she lost." Arden listened, the forensic part of her mind arranging the evidence, but another part, the part still bleeding from Tyler's betrayal, felt a fierce, protective pull toward this man. Their connection was born not from sunshine, but from shared understanding of how love could curdle into something toxic. One night, after a long walk where words became unnecessary, he kissed her by her doorstep. It was not a gentle kiss, it was desperate, hungry, a search for an anchor in the relentless, disorienting light. She kissed him back, for the same reasons. Their affair was conducted in the open secret of Pinecrest, in the pale nights. It was a rebellion for him, a lifeline for her. Vera said nothing, but her silence felt approving. Lydia, however, sensed the shift. Her warmth toward Arden cooled into a brittle, watchful politeness. The invitations to library committees stopped. The town, ever attuned to the Carson family's frequencies, began to glance from Arden to Kieran with renewed interest. Part 4, The Ultimatum. The tension snapped at the 4th of July barbecue, a defiantly American celebration under the Alaskan gloaming. Victor, drunk on bourbon and patriotism, gave a slurred speech about family, legacy, and the Carson name. He clapped Kieran on the shoulder, a gesture that looked hearty but from Arden's vantage point seemed to make Kieran flinch. Later, Arden went to fetch more soda from the ice-filled cooler near the wood's edge. Lydia materialized beside her, her perfume a sharp, floral note in the smell of charcoal and pine. "You've made quite an impression on Kieran," Lydia said, her voice a silken murmur. She didn't look at Arden, but out at the lake. "He's always been sensitive, drawn to wounded things." Arden kept her tone neutral. "I think we understand each other." "Do you?" Lydia turned, and in the dim, omnipresent light, her beautiful face was a mask of quiet malice. "You understand what it is to be a temporary diversion? A summer ghost? He has responsibilities here, a name to uphold, a family to lead. Maybe he wants a life, not a legacy," Arden shot back, her own anger surfacing. Lydia's smile was a cold, perfect curve. "His life is this legacy, it's what I built for him, what I sacrificed for." She leaned in infinitesimally. "He is mine, in every way that matters. You are a tourist, the season will end, the sun will set, and you will go." The encounter left Arden shaken. That night, Kieran came to her, his face drawn. "She confronted me, she said it's time to stop playing games, that Victor is getting old, that the mill, the town, it will be ours, hers and mine." She said he choked on the words. "She said we could finally stop pretending, that we could be together, properly, away from here. She's bought tickets to Iceland, for two." The grotesque reality of it, spoken aloud, hung in the air between them. The forbidden flame Lydia had kept alive had finally engulfed all reason, all boundaries. Kieran wasn't just her son, he was her second chance, her do-over with Daniel Shaw. "What did you say?" Arden whispered. "I said nothing, I walked out." He looked at her, his eyes wide with a trapped animal's fear. "I don't love her, not like that, I never could, but this town, this life she's woven, it's a web, and you feel like the only real thing, but you're leaving, aren't you?" The question hung in the air. Arden thought of Seattle, of her empty apartment, of Tyler's pathetic emails. She thought of the vast, silent freedom of the Alaskan wilderness, and she looked at Kieran, a man drowning in a love that was really a possessive, decades-old obsession. Part 5, The Choice and the Whisper. Arden didn't sleep. She paced the creaking floors of her half of the house, watched the sun dip to its lowest point, a bloody smear on the horizon, before beginning its slow, inevitable climb. She was not a savior, she was a wounded woman herself, but she was also a woman who could spot a rotten foundation. The next day was overcast, the sky a flat, oppressive gray that felt more like true night than the golden twilight. She went to the Carson house, a showpiece of logs and glass overlooking the lake. Victor was at the mill. Lydia answered the door, dressed as if for a casual lunch, her composure impeccable. Arden, to what do I owe this? We need to talk about Daniel Shaw. The name was the key. Lydia's facade didn't crack, it froze. She stepped back wordlessly, allowing Arden inside the cathedral-like living room, all exposed beams and trophy animal heads. I've seen the picture, Arden said, standing, refusing the offered seat. I know who Kieran's father is. The whole town probably does, on some level. They just choose your pretty story over the ugly truth. Lydia poured herself a glass of water from a crystal pitcher, her hand steady. And what is the truth, in your professional opinion? The truth is you've spent 28 years living with a ghost, and you've tried to make your son wear its face. You've trapped him in your unfinished story. Victor trapped himself in a bargain for a business, and Kieran. Arden's voice softened despite herself. Kieran is the only innocent one in this, and he's paying the highest price. Lydia took a sip of water. You think you understand love? You, running from a cheap affair in a city? What I had with Daniel, it was a comet, once in a lifetime. Kieran is my connection to that. He is mine. He's not a connection, he's a person, and he's not going to Iceland with you. And you think he'll go with you? Lydia's laugh was brittle. To what? Your broken life? No, Arden said, and in that moment, she knew her own truth. I'm not here to claim him, I'm here to tell you the game is over. I'm leaving Pinecrest tomorrow. But if you try to hold him with this sickness, I will make sure Vera's stories, and that photo, become the only stories this town tells. I will burn your pretty postcard to the ground. It was a bluff, but delivered with the cold conviction of a woman who had nothing left to lose. Lydia saw it, the ice in her eyes deepened, but behind it, Arden saw the first flicker of fear, not of exposure, but of losing the last, living remnant of her comet. Get out, Lydia whispered, the words devoid of their usual musicality. Arden left. She spent her last day packing, the numbness returning, but it was a clean numbness now, scoured by the cold wind. As she loaded her car the next morning under a light drizzle, Kieran's truck pulled up. He got out, looking like he hadn't slept. You're going, he stated. Yes. Did you mean it, what you said to her? Every word. Arden closed the trunk. You're not a ghost, Kieran. You're a man. Start living like one. It doesn't have to be with her, and it doesn't have to be with me, it just has to be yours. He stepped forward, cupped her face in his hands, and kissed her. It was a kiss of gratitude, of grief, of farewell. When he pulled back, his eyes were clear for the first time. Thank you, he said simply. He pressed a small, smooth stone into her hand, a piece of Lakecorn granite, cool and solid. Then he got back in his truck and drove toward the clinic, not looking back. Arden drove south, toward the proper night and the distant hum of her old life, as Pinecrest vanished in her rear view, swallowed by the mist and the towering spruce. She rolled down the window. The air that rushed in was no longer just cold, it was clean. She had come to the land of the midnight sun to lose herself in its blinding, disorienting light. Instead, she had been forced to see everything: the beautiful lies, the rotten foundations, the desperate, tangled loves with a terrible, clarifying acuity. She squeezed the granite stone in her palm. It was not a promise, it was a reminder, that even in the softest, most persistent light, some shadows, the ones we cast ourselves, are ours to choose. Dear listeners of the Book Whisper, we hope you've been left with a lasting impression. We're constantly searching for new stories to share with you. Don't miss what's next. Subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. Give us a like if you'd love more audiobooks like this. Until our next meeting on the pages of our tales.